So this is a general representation of a supply chain. In our example, we looked at consumer goods supply chain. Now let's also focus on few other attributes to the supply chain, right? So with the recent advancement in technology, the way that consumers interact with different parts of the supply chain gets very interesting, right? For example, your consumer can go to a retail store and purchase products right off of the shelf, or alternatively, they can visit an online portal wherein they can place order, or they can in fact order through other methods, like for example phone or social media, so on and so forth. So it gets pretty interesting how customers can place orders. And the way that your supply chain can respond to these orders at some level would be to aggregate these orders and appropriately provide a response. For example, if a customer walks into a retailer store, then you need to have sufficient inventory at that location in order for customers to buy. If a customer orders through a web page, it truly depends how you are going to satisfy the demand depending on the needs of the customer. For example, the customer can pick up the order from the retail store, or the customer can request a curbside pickup, or the customer can request a delivery, a shipment of the product. Now, when it comes to any of these, the shipment can happen from the retail location to the customer, or the shipment can happen from a DC, a central DC to the customer. The shipment can happen from a manufacturing facility to the customer. The shipment can happen from any of the components of the supply chain to the customer, depending on whatever the lead time, the time between the order and the expected time of delivery. That's what is called as a lead time. So depending on the lead time, and also depending on the method of delivery that the customer has requested, and also the cost involved in transportation of the product, all these will dictate the way the delivery is done. In this example, we are looking at multiple channels of supply chain. Multiple channels. One is through the retailer delivery, the other is direct shipment from DC, the other is manufacturers ship to the customer directly, or the customer can pick up or do a curbside pickup request, or delivery at home, or delivery to a central postbox location or a locker location, right? So that's another one. So locker delivery is another one. And the way the customer interacts with the business by placing order through social media or through the web or through a phone call or through retailer, these are all the ways that would dictate multiple channels for the material flow and the information flow and the cash flow happen within a supply chain. And if you have a channel that is amenable for all sorts of cross interaction of material flows, information flows, and financial flows, then you have what is called as an omni-channel supply chain. Okay, this is pretty recent in terms of supply chain technology. The technology development and proficiency created this competitive advantage for companies to come together and offer such values for the end consumer. Now, we talked about multiple echelons in a supply chain. Let's focus on the echelon-based representation of a supply chain. So we may have different geographical proximities, different countries, different cities, different counties, etc., right? Different geographical proximities. So these could be market regions. In your market regions, you have the consumers. Now, where do you locate retail stores, right? So retail stores, where do you locate them becomes a question. And you can have a whole bunch of retail locations in your supply chain that cater to multiple market segments, right? So this is a retail echelon. You have market regions and you have retail echelons. Similarly, you can have distribution centers, and the distribution centers can cater to multiple retail locations. So this would be a distribution center echelon. Similarly, you may have factories or manufacturing plants, and here you may have a plant dedicated for a certain type of product or product line, right? And these could cater to multiple distribution centers. And you have a manufacturing echelon. Similarly, you may have a group of suppliers that may deliver products to these manufacturers, right? And these suppliers would be in the supply echelon. Now, similarly, for them, they would have a whole bunch of suppliers. This would be the tier 2 suppliers. Supplier would be tier 2 echelon, tier 1 supplier echelon, so on and so forth. So this is a network representation of a supply chain. And when you have frameworks such as multi-channel or omni-channel, then you allow interaction between the distribution centers and market regions directly, right? This is a possibility. And any distribution center can interact with any market region, so all these are possibilities, right? All right. Now, in addition to this, the manufacturers can also interact with retail locations, for example, and you can have the manufacturers also interact with market regions directly in an omni-channel supply chain. So you see how many links I'm adding. I'm deliberately doing this to give the busy nature, the complex nature of the underlying supply chain network. Many times suppliers are also involved in interacting with distribution centers for spare parts, components that go into a product, or directly shipped to market regions or the retailers. So it's pretty interesting when you have supply chains like this. Also, the manufacturer to manufacturer shipment, right? So that's a possibility. DC to DC shipment, that's a possibility. Retailer to retailer exchanges, that's a possibility. So when you look at the multiple interactions, the links between the locations here represent a material flow. This is a network representation of supply chain, and we usually call this the supply network. And it's pretty complicated to manage this, right? Imagine some of the suppliers in a different continent. Some of the DCs spread across different regions of a country. So if you have multiple distribution centers spread across a whole, continent or whole couple of continents, it becomes pretty difficult and complex to manage such a supply chain because of international regulations involved, different cultures being involved. Shipments would take a lot of time because of customs processing, import-export rules. The way you account for it and you present to your tax authorities would be different. To protect the transported materials would have to be a focal point here as well. Weather-related disruptions to shipment would be another aspect here in terms of the global or international supply chains. All right, so let's very quickly look at the different decisions that happen in supply chains. When it comes to decisions, there are three categories of decisions. The first one is the long-term decisions. The second one is the medium-term decisions. And the last one is the short-term decisions. And the technical jargon for these types of decision would be For long term, it is strategic decisions. For medium term, it is tactical decisions. And for the short term, these are what are called as operational level decisions. Now, examples of strategic decision would be facility location. Where do you locate warehouse? Would you insource or outsource your products for the next 5 to 10 years? Would you add capacity? What level of capacity would you add? These would be part of the strategic decisions. Now, what would be your pricing strategy? What is your revenue management strategy, right? That would belong to the tactical level decisions. And perhaps inventory, how much to replenish, where to replenish, that would be part of the tactical decisions. Then if you are looking at production, here the aggregate planning would be part of the medium term decisions. For the operational level decisions, example would be operator schedules. So every day you have different shifts in different location. So how do you schedule them? Every day you send out vehicles to dispatch orders for your customers or your end consumers. So those are vehicle routes. Vehicle routing would be one aspect of the operational level decision. So these are basically every day, every week, short-term decisions.